So, Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. I think a lot of us listening to the president yesterday certainly shared the sentiment. At the same time, what does that say about what we do in Afghanistan? Does that mean we can get out by August 31? Are we going to hunt down these people responsible by that time?
I think we can do both. I think that, number one, what we're going to do by August 31st, and even go past that date, is to get every American citizen out, as well as the SIVs, the special visas that we're getting, immigrant visas, and those from Afghanistan that worked with us. Initially we were talking about 60,000 people out. We are well over 100,000 now, and there will be more that we will get out before the 31st date. And there are plans to continue even after the 31st, those that were not able to get out, to get them out. So that means that we are going to live up to our word, of course, to our American citizens, to the men and women in our military, and to the Afghans that put their lives and families on the line for the United States of America.
So, Congressman Meeks, if in fact we continue evacuations past the 31st, can we do that without U.S. forces on the ground to ensure security?
There is mechanisms that I'm assured of that I can't talk about, but there are mechanisms and things that are in place to make sure that every American citizen that wants to leave will leave. So I feel confident about us keeping our word, about the president keeping his word on making sure that every American citizen that wants to leave, we will get them out. As well as our SIVs and those Afghans and their families that stood by us. And it's been, we're not talking about it enough, I don't think. We've already got well over 100,000 people out in this particular, since August, which is substantially important. And that's what the focus is.
Congressman Meeks, we heard yesterday from the general in charge of CENTCOM that, in fact, we're going to have to work with the Taliban and even entrust them, maybe not trust, but entrust them with the job of giving some security at Kabul airport. Do you anticipate that? Are we going to be working with the Taliban, having them ensure some of the security we need for further evacuations?
Look, the fact of the matter is right now, whether we like it or not, because the president of the Afghan security forces, etc., Ghani, left. So the people that's in charge of the security of Kabul and other places is the Taliban. They are the ones that are now in charge. They're the ones why they have the checkpoints and trying to keep some individuals from getting to the airport, and as well as when we urged all Americans and others to stay away from the airport, they were part of the process, with the checkpoints that they had to try to prevent folks who should not be at the airport from getting there, and also to try to stop any type of terrorist acts from taking place. Unfortunately, it seems as though one slipped by, and clearly the evidence thus far shows that there is no collusion between the Taliban and ISIS-K. In fact, it seems as though ISIS-K is much wanted to kill and go against the Taliban as they wanted to do against America. So in that scenario, when we leave and all of our troops are gone, the one that's going to be in charge for the security of the Afghans is going to be the Taliban.
So, Congressman, this is a terribly important point I think you're making, that some of us were not sophisticated enough to understand that, in fact, the Taliban might be fighting with ISIS-K, that offshoot of Islamic State, might be fighting with them. They may have their own sort of civil war going on. And in that case, is the enemy of my enemy my friend in the form of the Taliban?
As it pertains to ISIS-K, absolutely. And in fact, though, the Taliban, we can't trust them, but we're going to try to hold them to their word. They made certain commitments. One of those commitments, for example, was, and this was done under the Trump administration, that if we were out by May 1st, they would not be shooting at American military folks, and they did not. So to that, though we was watching and we did not trust them, but it showed that up until May 1st, they had not shot at us. And so in this case, I'm sure that the enemy, that the Taliban, who is against ISIS-K, we have a mutual interest in destroying ISIS-K. So I would hope that any information that they gain as to where the leadership of ISIS-K is located, that they would share that intelligence. And once we get that intelligence, I think that's exactly what the President of the United States said yesterday, then there's no place they can hide. Once we find out, we will get it.
So, Congressman, for a very long time, we have thought in the United States that basically conducting a foreign policy, certainly military affairs, is a matter for the executive branch. I wonder if it's time to reassess that question, what the role of the Congress is in this. What role should the Congress have, both with respect to specifically what's going on in Afghanistan and more broadly? Should we be revisiting some of those things like the authorization of the use of military force?
Well, you know, as chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, we are. We are looking now. We repealed in the House the AUMF for several other old and outdated AUMFs, and now we are looking at the possibility of repeal and replace of the 2001 AUMF, of which many presidents have utilized for their authority to continue wars like the one in Afghanistan. So we will, once we get all of our people home, because the singular focus of the committee right now is making sure that we're working with and overseeing the process of keeping our commitment. But once we get our people home and our troops are out of there, the committee will be going over our oversight authority, but also looking at and working with in a bipartisan manner. This is something that's not a partisan issue. The repeal and replacement of the AUMF. And we look forward to working with the Senate and the administration to get it done, because yes, you're right. It is Congress' responsibility to declare war, determine where we will authorize the use of military force. And we need to take that responsibility seriously and make sure that we don't just give it away to the executive.
Finally, Congressman, you mentioned oversight responsibility there, quite apart from AUMF. What do we expect in terms of investigations, in terms of hearings? Who will be taking the lead? Will you be taking the lead in part to figure out what happened? Even not so much to say, to point fingers, but to say, how can we avoid this ever happening again?
Absolutely. We're planning right now. As I said, the only issue is trying to get past the current bringing our people home. But soon thereafter, I've invited already Secretary of State Blinken to come before the House Foreign Affairs Committee so that we can begin to have that dialogue and that conversation. So I would suspect that sometime in September even, we'll start that process of having Secretary Blinken first come before the committee, and we'll begin to ask those questions and see what lessons we've learned from this experience, so that we make sure that we can avoid the kinds of catastrophic events that took place, unfortunately, yesterday, and have and see where the mistakes were, if there were any, and what we can do to improve them.
Congressman, thank you so very much for being with us today. Really helpful. That is Representative Gregory Meeks. He's Democrat of New York and the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee.